Hi there. We have communism and we have capitalism. What do we have behind the two regimes? What is the doctrine behind the two? Communism, actually we don't speak about communism, everybody knows that, but we have in the world, in mankind, in nature, that's existing since the beginning of this world. We have the high, the low, we have the rich, the poor, we have the strong and the weak, the knowledgeable person who is perhaps not knowledgeable, we don't say ignorance. There's this kind of disparity. Disparity is not necessarily from its financial aspect. So when we speak about regime, it's mostly about money aspect, financial aspect. But still, we have this disparity between classes in the country. There is a rich and a poor. So what the communism say? The communism, this is between rich, there's a margin between the rich and poor. Communism say, people should be equal. The Marxism says that people must be equal. So the government has to interfere. The government confiscates all the properties and then distribute them supposedly equally on people. Of course, it will be a little bit different, but this is what they mean by what's the doctrine of communism. Capitalism is, on the other side, says no, the rich has the right to own anything. There's no limit to his richness. He can do anything he wants. And the poor, he has to work for his life. And we have some ads from the government to help the poor, whatever. This is basically what the two regimes say. Now, what do we have in this disparity? What do we have? What is between the rich and the poor? This particular location or margin, or call it gap, whatever it seems to be to people, this is where the nation exercises its emotions, sentimental emotions. This territory must be inaccessible. No one has the right to access this territory because it belongs to God. This is where human exercises his emotions. This is the flow of the emotions from the rich to the poor. Are you going to say generosity? Are you going to say person is like compassion and tenderness? Sympathy, empathy. This is the flow. It is constantly provoked by itself, incited, the person is incited by himself. Actually, this is love. Human being is created from unicellular, not pluricellular. When he is a human, I'm not talking after being indoctrinated by an egocentric mentality, by being indoctrinated by a territory, a mindset of solipsism. He lives in his own. Before that, he feels the other. Now, this territory belongs to God. So, what the communism does, this is, I said, the flow of the emotions. This is psycho, socio, geo, whatever call it, political, with the flow between people. This is where the stability of the emotions between people. The government seizes this, confiscates this. Then people become executant. Does he exercise? He exercises his emotions while being institutionalized, not freely. He is just instructed to act and react according to a previous doctrine. Capitalism, on the other side, you can help people if you want. Nobody is telling you why. In this disparity, what do we have? I say the communism confiscates that. Capitalism, what does it do? The rich can help the poor. How does he help him? By putting his money at the bank, and the bank gives him interest. When the poor buys something, he has to pay interest. When he pays interest, those interests, they go, this person poor, he's going to be exploited by the help, between brackets, supposedly of the rich. He's going to help him by exploitation. And the rich is getting those kind of interests, they go back in his CD. In other words, in his saving account. So the rich is getting as much as the poor ask, that one becomes richer and richer. So this is the help of the capitalism system. Now, what was supposed, the same thing with the communism, what was supposed to flow, you say the flow of the emotions, God made it this way. Between the rich and the poor, the rich, what he's doing here in the capitalist system, putting the money at the bank, exploiting people. You understand? So the system is built on usury, is built on exploitation. Then what's going to happen? We are not talking about the money, we are talking about what is frozen here. Emotions are frozen. You see, the system, for instance, like those capitalist nations, what they have achieved in 2 centuries is other nations haven't achieved that in thousands of years. This is what's going on. The emotions are people become executant. They work very, 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 very hard. This is, I'm not talking about those who are enslaved directly. I'm talking those people who have been enslaved diplomatically in a civilized way. The system they run, they built it very quick. At the same time, their emotions are frozen, that's it. It's owned by the banking system. What is the banking system? Is it just holding? It's a miscarriage of the emotions of people. You know, a woman may miscarriage because of failure, something about her. She doesn't, because of sickness. The country or banking system is a miscarriage of the emotions of people, because confiscating the emotions. When you look at both of the regimes, one of them is the guillotine of the emotions, the other one is the Holocaust of the emotions. Which one and which one? It's up to you to determine that. Now, when did it start? This usury. Shall get to that later. Okay? So, what's going on? Now, what are the consequences? The emotions in their primordial state, they have a tendency is like to break, to pierce or transpierce, trespass, blow any kind of wall from the mind. You try to indoctrinate, you try to confiscate, you try to brainwash those emotions because they belong to God. They want, the soul wants to go back to its creator. They do this, and they have been pressured by a doctrine, by a regime, because every regime, in order for the regime to survive, they have to create a dogma, a fabricated dogma with a propaganda campaign that people constantly bombarded by being brainwashed with subliminal message. You know what I'm saying? A subliminal message is indoctrination without citizen being fully aware of what's going on. What will happen? One day it blows up. People didn't exercise their emotions in both regimes. In one regime, which is the capitalist, it keeps camouflaging. The pressure is causing almost, and it will see it, almost a civilian war. The suicidal state is one of the highest in the world, in both. The mass shooting is the highest in the world. They criticize other countries about human rights, etc. People like in jail, that country, the number of people in jail cannot be calculated. Anyway, now, what does it mean? The stock market. What is the stock market? Stocking merchandise. Yeah, we know that. So, originally, we know that stocking merchandise, what are the purpose? What is behind that? You stock the merchandise and you wait for the penury. Penury, in other words, the lack of those commodities in the market, and then to take it out to sell it more expensive than its regular price. It's prohibited in all the divine books. But let's just get back to one particular event that happened during the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He heard people stocked merchandise, commodities. He asked them to take it out. And he said it in another place. Proverbs says, those who stock this, they are not among people. They are not the true believers. So he asked people to take it outside. He was not wondering about the commodity being stocked. The Prophet doesn't come for that, doesn't deal with, I show him the moon is looking at my finger. No, prophets are wondering, mostly concerned about the emotions. Because these people, they have what's supposed to flow between a vendor, second vendor, between the wholesaler, retailer, between people and the client, the customer, is stocked. You cannot do this. You are going to cause chaos. He asked them to take it outside. Then his companion suggested to him, say, "Oh Prophet, why don't you fix the price?" He became red, he got mad, and he said, look, the price belongs to God. He can raise it anytime he wants. He can lower it anytime he wants. He had all the power to implement this law, to pressure them to do. He had all the power. His companions were very strong. He had a lot, but no, that's not my territory. My territory is to worry about the merchandise. Commodity shouldn't be stocked, but the price, I don't interfere. You know what I'm saying? Why? What is the price? The price is the flow of the emotions between the vendor and the buyer, between the salesman or seller and the buyer. There is something is going on here. It's not about the commodity you buy and you leave. So you are surprised or like just a needy person. Why don't you, can you lower the price, please? Yeah, why not? Oh, I can't. There's always a duty of conscience. Sentimental emotions are constantly being exercised. Getting back to the stock. When the stock market was created, it was created in 1800. They said 17-ish. Well, that's the record of Google. Stock market started during Moses' time, alayhi salam. Peace be upon him. Started during Moses' time. Between just quickly parenthesis to say, When Moses, peace be upon him, left Egypt, God asked him to move, to go. Pharaoh collapsed, he and his army. Why God didn't ask Moses to take over? You know, if it was a matter of coup d'etat, changing a system, changing a regime, this is not the role of the prophets. The prophets, they come to touch the psyche of the populations. They don't interfere about the regime. Regime is just the epitome of what people are hiding and camouflaging within their own psyche, and they ignore that. People are talking about either outside, you know, trying to fix problems. That's something, it's not a part of the prophet's perhaps concern. So God didn't ask him to do that. Moses' government was in a constant transit. All what you see, you heard about the 10 commandments, about what happened, events, unbelievable. Moses' name is mentioned more than 134 times in the Quran, his name. Whereas Muhammad's name is mentioned 3, 4, maybe 5 plus Ahmed. Some people, they say, it seems as if the Quran was revealed to Moses, not to Muhammad. Peace be upon them. Anyway, when he went to speak to God on the mountain, before his return, God told him, this is something happened with your people. He left his brother Aaron to, to watch over. He gave him the responsibility about the children of Israel, what's going on. Be careful, the responsibility. Such an, was like dealing with something very important. So, As-Samiri is a name mentioned in the Quran. What the Christians and Jews, they call Samaritan. History is sometimes awkward, or most of the time awkward. The one who caused the biggest tribulation in history, mankind history, they gave him the credit. They made the word Samaritan, that means he's the last person who comes to rescue you. Oh, it's like the White Knight. When in fact, he was the one who caused the biggest tribulation. I said they call him Samaritan. That's the one. But in the modified, pay attention, emphasize on these words, the modified Torah, what they said Aaron, the brother of Moses, is the one who caused that tribulation, God forbid. God forbid if prophets of God, they call people for the idolatry. They said, and then after God forgave him. Be careful. What did he do? He asked people to give their jewelry. He gathered all the jewelry. Actually, the word jewelry is taken from Jewish. The jewelry, he amalgamated, amalgamated, and he made it in a shape of calf. A baby bull was in gold. Now, who is this Samaritan? Who is he? Is he a politician? Is he an economist? He was religious. This is why the curse is coming on people like this, because from religion they control people. They take the secret that God made. Satan, of course, is with the help of Mr. Lucifer. And then they enslave people. So he was a religious, very mystical person, knowing deep things. He knew even about the passage of Angel Gabriel. When he passed by, he leaves behind him life, temporary life. He caught a glimpse from that, because he's an angel. I'm talking about the Samaritan. He caught from what was left as a residue from Angel Gabriel, that life, a temporary life, and he blew it in the calf. The calf moved with the moaning sound of the calf. You know what I'm saying? When the children of Israel saw that, they said, it's impossible, that's God. And he told them, not the Samaritan. There's another personal pronoun. We shall get to that quickly. Now, a question might arise. Why you didn't do it from clay? It's manipulable. Clay with the water, you can modify any shape you want. Why he didn't do it from the wood? He did it with what the children of Israel and people in general, they have their heart connected to, linked to, which is the gold. You understand? This is what they say about he who owns the gold, as they say it. Remember the gold rule? He who has the gold makes the rules. So, because their hearts are connected to the gold, with the moaning sound and the motion of the calf, he can control them. So this is the beginning of the stock market. Stock market didn't start in 1800. We went a little far. Our topic is not about this. Speaking about interest. When they say the Second World War, Second World War, that's a war, that's the world. It's like you are talking about Titanic sank. Can you possibly picture someone, those people who are like drowned, being drowned, is taking a piece of paper and writing, and maybe he's thinking about how much money I'm gonna make and how many people I'm gonna hire. Could you possibly imagine or imagine someone like this? Impossible. He must be outside to be able to think, to decide, and take all these kinds of decisions. World War, people are looking for just a moment because the whole world was like in Europe, bloodshed. Those countries who were not affected by the bloodshed or like that kind of bombardment, they were affected by poverty. Other countries who were not affected by poverty, they were affected by separation. Other people were affected by epidemics. So no one could possibly. How come during the Second World War that finished, supposedly? In 1945, IMF was created in 1944. The World Bank was created in 1944. Established 45, whatever, about the IMF, but 44. Okay. Now, how come? We spoke earlier about in a nation, this disparity, those people who own the banking system to own the emotions of the population. And then from there is encapsulated all the rules, what is prohibited, what is tolerated, is all has to do with how much people they can make. Everything, the bylaws are established according to those who own the banking system. People are desperate, they borrow. I'm not saying they have, but that's what's going on. But interests were existing all the time. But during the Second War, the system was shifted. It's no longer dealing a country within a country. Those country, people dealing within a nation. No. Is the high-tech North against the high-tech would be, no, it's not the high-tech, it's the South. How you can manipulate a world by usury. Today, what you see in the world, what's going on today, it's all a matter of who owns who owns the gold. The system of Mammonism. You speak about the communism. Those who created the capitalism themselves, they are those who created the communism. It has to be an opposite force. This is how the system is in the world. In the system, be careful, you'll be by yourself. You have to find someone to devaluate in order to prove yourself. There is the one that is neutral, truly neutral, doesn't belong to either one. Today the system, but now as you see, the system of the East is against the West and the West against the East. This is nature in the world. You know, one day I'm going to change the topic. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sitting and his mule was running. It's like a sort of competition. And there was another one that belongs to some disbelievers. Those people, polytheists, they were not believers. So the one that belongs to those disbelievers ran faster than the one that belongs to the prophet. The prophet's companion got mad. You know, that mad, they wanted to kill the other one. Prophet ﷺ said, hey, slow down. Slow down, he's teaching people. He said, whoever claims supremacy, omnipotence in this world, whoever, God will send him someone to knock him down. That's nature, man. It cannot be. You are the champion, you will have your time. The true force in the world, before it reached the top of the mountain, during, the valley, I'm talking about the slope, has to be distributed, which is not the case today. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in any kind of regime in the world. Again, getting back to the usury. Usury, before the end, there was already what is after the post-war is worse than the war. You see, because the wars, all of the wars of the 20th century, starting from the First World War, second, after the Second World War in Korea, in the 60s, every decade there is a war engineered. Don't think it's like this, randomly engineered. The war after the 60s, there were in the Middle East, 73 Middle East, in 78 Argentina, in 90 every decade there was a war, there is a war starting somewhere. And why is that? People are occupied, preoccupied just to look for the last breath, just to survive. Their body, families fragmented, decapitated, people like bombs and this. There is an agenda. After war is worse than when it's going on in the war. To be prepared for them. Did it start this usury in 1944? No, it started during Moses' time. Wow, Moses' time. You cannot imagine these people, how much they have. Money. You said tons of money, tons. I don't know. It's not something to speak. This is Korah. Korah, this is a personality that was among the other two personalities in Pharaoh's regime in Egypt during Moses' time. Peace be upon him. He was dealing with usury. That's him. He was dealing with usury. You can say he was a Copt. No, he was not a Copts. The Copts that were Egyptians. Pharaoh, Haman. And the magicians, of course. Magicians, the corporate media. That is the cover-up campaign. Pharaoh is good, anyone else is bad. Pharaoh is good, anyone else is bad. Korah was from the children of Israel. And the children of Israel, they were being slaughtered. The same thing it happened in the Second World War. While he was celebrating this with the aperitif. He didn't care. It's his interest. The same thing what happened is this. He was using a usury. Moses was a danger for him. He didn't like him, of course. They don't like him, of course. That regime doesn't like him. They even claim, Pharaoh, say, my people, don't you see that I have the river, this kingdom of Egypt is mine, and the rivers flow at my feet? My people, kill Moses. I'm afraid that he will change your religion, like this religion, back then the religion, don't say constitution. He will change your religion and will cause mischief in the land. That's in the Quran written like this. As I said, I want to change it. I want to change the topic. Korah was from the children of Israel. The money was condensed with a ton up to the point that he was engulfed with his financial center in the earth. You can understand the regime was, by the time that happened, Pharaoh, not long after Korah's financial center collapsed, he didn't survive a lot and then collapsed. Now, the last few words. What is the definition of bluff? You bluff, you try to impress an audience, but the thing is, what's going on today in the West? When a person can bluff one time, but bluffing after bluff after bluff after bluff, to be disclosed or to be exposed his reality to the world, he can do anything. Give an example of when the United States threw the 2 bombs in Japan, on Japanese people, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan was gone, was burned, bombarded everywhere, but napalm with all kinds of bombs. But why the United States threw that? They didn't throw it on Japan. No, they threw it on the world. To intimidate the world, don't you ever try to mess. Don't try to mess with the United States. That's why they didn't throw it. Today, what's going on about this nuclear threat from everybody? These people, they're not going to give it like this unless there is a miracle. And the miracle is when people, the poor people, are sincere. The miracle comes. If people everywhere in the world, they are sincere, they are waiting for something, God will bring a miracle. It's not difficult. But we notice, I'm talking officially, I'm not accusing sincere people existing in every religion. Attention, no? I don't exclude this religion from the other. They are sincere people. Few. But these people who have been dealing with the monopoly of the currency, as they call it, a legal tender. Look at this. The word legal tender became sort of like a formula. Is the peso, Mexican peso, considered as a legal tender? No, it's not convertible. It doesn't exist. Is the Moroccan dirham considered as legal tender? No. Is Saudi Arabia dirham, dinar, dirham, whatever, dirham, even though it is a strong currency, but it's not considered as a legal tender. A legal tender, we agree, the North, the high-tech North, that only the American dollar, Canadian dollar, euro, British pound, New Zealand, and Australian dollar. These are, plus the Quran of the Scandinavian countries. You can see these countries who are constantly there together. When in fact it's not true, not the population. Population is against, but all of these are puppets. They are conducted, teleguided by one hand. That's why you see it's one word. How can that be? Don't you have your own emotion to decide differently? No, all of them one word. Because, not because of them, it's because the one who is manipulating them, they control them. Are you kidding me? Are they going to let someone else, the trade, all of these, what you see, the recent wars against Iraq, because Iraq decided back then to trade, to change the trade from the dollar to another currency. Venezuela was targeted because of that. Syria is targeted because of that. All of these today, do you think that they're going to leave? They can cause. They are provoking the nuclear war. Because they're going to say, don't they have a conscience to think? If you go to Pharaoh, Pharaoh, you try to take a microphone, ask him, what would he say? Pharaoh is no longer in his conscience. Pharaoh is dominated by the compulsions. Compulsions are irresistible forces that are dragging a nation, not a person. You know, he was after Moses. He reached the sea. He saw Moses striking the sea that was, split into two. But that's God's miracle. Why don't you just back up? No, he can't. He lived with the bluff. He cannot back up because he will no longer intimidate the world. That's why he continued. But he didn't continue. The compulsions, irresistible forces that dragged him. In the beginning of the story, Pharaoh, I'm talking about Pharaoh or Pharaoh today, actualized. This is the reenactment of those events. God sent angel Gabriel to Pharaoh as in a physiognomy incarnated in a human being. He said, Pharaoh, what must be the consequence of someone who pretends to be God? He thought about himself. Quickly he responded, he said, he deserved to be drowned in a sea, not even buried or burned, whatever. He should be drowned in a sea to disappear completely. This is Pharaoh's response. Angel Gabriel, he said, oh Pharaoh, would you please write these hieroglyphically on something with your signature? I shall show it to anybody who pretends to be God. Look, the day when he was fighting for his life in the middle of the sea before he was drowned, he and his army, Angel Gabriel came to him. He said, Pharaoh, aren't you the one who wrote this? Isn't this your signature? You know what I'm saying? Objection, your honor. Yeah, he said it. You know, when a nation is driven by all this propaganda campaign, he was saying that Moses is bad, Moses is bad, Moses is bad, he's a terrorist, he's bad. He couldn't back up, that's it. Listen, it is always a pleasure. I thank you very much for your attention, and I guess I see you soon.